A lot of people believe that the Glock was the first polymer-framed handgun. Not true. It was actually the H&K VP70, which came out a full 13 years before Gaston Glock's pistol.
It was a very unusual design for a handgun by our standards. It was made as a select fire pistol. It had a 3-round burst function. It had one of those always handy holster shoulder stocks that are about the size of a shoebox, and you're supposed to wear on your belt and carry your pistol in it, and in a moment of stress remove the pistol, attach the stock, and fire it. But it was a polymer frame.
It was initially made as a military and police pistol in that it could be selective fire. And the way it would be selective fire was if the gun was just loose in your hand, shooting it one-handed, it was semi-automatic only. If you put the shoulder stock on it, it would become selective fire, and it was capable of up to 2,200 rounds per minute.
It was a 9 parabellum and had a long, very hard trigger pull that didn't make a lot of sense, actually. But this was apparently what the specification called for, and that's what H&K engineers produced.
A lot of people think that the Glock was the first polymer frame pistol, and it's simply not true. Gaston Glock's gun emerged in 1983. A full 13 years before that, Heckler & Koch of Oberndorf, Germany, had introduced the VP70, and that's for volume pistol. And this was a blowback operated gun, 4.5-inch barrel, and it took an 18-round magazine, had a Parkerized steel slide, and of course the frame was polymer.
It had an unusually high capacity for the time. I believe it was 18 or 19 rounds at a time when 13 or 15 rounds was considered high capacity for a pistol. It was large for a pistol, but it was lightweight due to the synthetic construction.
There are 2 versions of the gun subsequently made. The VP70M for Militar, which was a selective fire gun. Then there was the VP70Z for civil or civilian. And we tested the VP70Z back in 1980. And this is a gun that weighed 40.5 ounces. It's a big gun, but not terribly heavy. But the real problem with it was it had a 14.5-pound trigger pull. The evaluators at the time noted, quote, "You have to master the double action trigger pull to be proficient." I don't care who you are, 14.5 pounds is not something anyone can really master. The VP70 was, of course, striker fired. It had no external hammer. And the problem was, it was a gun that was ahead of its time. Really, there were some small agencies that adopted it, some small countries adopted it, but it never really caught on. It almost became a firearms curiosa not long after its introduction. And of course, HK moved on. They developed the very successful MP5 submachine gun, and then they developed the squeeze-cocking P7. Really, the VP70 was ahead of its time, and it quickly faded away in firearms history. I've had a chance to shoot a VP70, and it's not bad. The trigger pull is absolutely horrendous. It's terrible. But I've also had a chance to fire the selective fire gun with the shoulder stock attached, and it's quite a ride.